Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Gaming Mix podcast, your official podcast from analogstickgaming.com. We've already had a cat appearance, but we'll talk about that in a moment. If you don't know me, my name is Jordan, one of the co-owners of Analog Stick Gaming. And to my right, which will be the usual from now on, is the Obi-Wan to my Luke Skywalker, Jeff Young, the founder of Analog Stick Gaming. How are you, Jeff?
Good. I haven't collapsed into a pile of clothes yet, so I am pre New Hope.
Fantastic. Yes, of course, if you've clicked on this episode, you will see that me and Jeff, thanks to Ubisoft, we have both been provided codes for the game, and we are both playing Star Wars Outlaws, but we are kind of at the point, because we're recording this a few days before the embargo, we haven't actually got far enough to do a full review yet. So this is sort of our impressions of the early hours of the game and the core systems and all that sort of thing. But you will be able to find our full reviews because I'm actually reviewing it for our friends at the Outer Haven. So shout out to Keith Mitchell and the team over there, because they are the ones who actually were able to get me the code and kind of allow me to do their review. And Jeff is obviously handling our review on Analog Stick Gaming. I will, when they are available, I will link both of those in the description below. I am hoping to have mine available on embargo. So if you're watching this episode, hopefully mine is up right now. And I assume Jeff is hoping for the same, but he might be a bit behind me because
Yeah,
I've played a bit
it
more
usually
than
takes me a
him
little while.
currently.
It usually takes me a
Yeah.
little while to write a review, just because I end up writing something and then I'm not happy with it, and then I kind of
Yeah.
rewrite it and all that bullshit. So
Yeah. So this is just early part of the game. There will be some minor spoilers of like gameplay mechanics and that kind of thing, but we're not really going to be spoiling the story. We're just going to do the initial setup, um, because obviously nobody's played it yet, and we want you to experience this game for yourself. So, Jeff, why don't we start with you? How would you like to start here? Do you want to set up what Star Wars Outlaws is for people?
yeah. So basically, like Star Wars Outlaws is kind of an open world Star Wars game, but it's not centered around the Jedi, which has been kind of the crutch of pretty much 98% of all Star Wars games. Essentially, is they'll feature like the Jedi in a lead, or whether or not you have a assortment of characters like Battlefront or anything like that. But you basically play as Kay Vess. You're kind of like I wouldn't say really a smuggler, because that requires you to kind of like go off planet and smuggle. Um, she's just kind of like not like a mercenary or anything like that,
You're
but
what's
she's
known
skilled.
as a scoundrel in the
Yeah,
Star Wars universe.
yeah. So you're a scoundrel, and basically there's kind of a a mission to gain enough money to essentially get off world. That's been her kind of dream. And this mission
And
mission
this is it's important to say as well. This is kind of, anyone who's played a Ubisoft game will know that they do the first few hours where you're leading up to the title card. This is sort of the bit that we're talking about right now, isn't it, Jeff?
yeah, I'm just getting down to where I have the planets listed here. So
Mm.
yeah, like you start on uh, Katonica. It's
Yes.
the casino city of Canto Bite, and it's kind of like a hotspot for like wealthy tourists and like high stakes gamblers and
Yeah.
all that kind of
Yeah.
stuff.
For anyone
And
who's watched the movies, they'll be very aware of Canterbite.
yeah,
I'm sure.
and so basically you kind of get involved in a mission that kind of goes sideways through its own elements of kind of how the plot moves forward, and you end up stealing a ship, and that's the ship that you've seen in the trailers and all that kind of stuff. and you're kind of on the run from the person that you essentially you're muted. You're kind of on the run from this kind of like bad guy essentially. He's gonna kind of essentially be the foil for
There
the
is actually an initial scene when you first load into the game that sets him up before you even get to gameplay. There
yeah.
is this initial scene with him, so you will be introduced to him early on. Um, and he is a bad guy. His name's Sliro. And yeah, basically, after this initial mission goes wrong, him and his group of people are out after you, right? And that's where your galaxy adventures kind of start, really.
Yeah. Yeah, so you get the ship and then you basically kind of like haul ass wherever you can go. You basically just like punch in a random location to essentially get away
Yeah, because the ship is
Katana.
broken as well. That's important to say.
Yeah.
That early on, the
So
ship is
yeah,
broken.
basically that takes you to Toshara. And oh, 1 second here. If I remember correctly here, yeah. So uh, where is it here? Toshara is essentially this game's hinterlands. Where like in Dragon Age Inquisition, a lot of people are like, man, hinterlands is like forever. I've been here for like 20 hours or whatever. Like, when does the
Yeah.
story start going? Toshara is that type of location where it's the big massive open world location because like
Is
you end
your
up going.
is your tutorial area basically, isn't it? Because
I
there
think way more than that.
it
Because you
is. No, it is
yeah.
absolutely, and we'll get into it. But when you first get to Tashara, they are still teaching you a lot of mechanics, and you're
Yeah, I
unlocking
mean it in the
different
sense that
systems.
it doesn't remain as a tutorial area because like there are games where like one whole giant area is simply just for tutorials and then you move
Yeah,
on to the rest of the game.
and
Like
that's not the case here, which I actually
yeah,
really like.
yeah, like
Because let's be one thing I do want to say while we're on the subject is like this is open world, but you are kind of moving to different planets, which is something we'll talk about a bit later. But each of these planets is fairly sizable, it seems.
well, I mean like I've been to the next area after that and as far as I've been able to tell it's just a city unless you go
Interesting.
elsewhere in
Oh
it.
yeah, no, yeah, yeah. So the next one after that might just be a city, actually.
Because
Yeah,
I'm
you're right.
pretty sure it's just that. Like, I like because like the planets have kind of already been like you've already seen like Jabba's there, so obviously you go to Tatooine, and I'm assuming Tatooine's going to be a big, giant, sprawling open world area. Um, but
I won't spoil it because I have been there already.
yeah,
So
um, yeah, so like you get to Toshara, and it's kind of like it's a savanna moon. It has like a lot of like strong winds, and it has like sandstone mounds. It's got like a bunch of like kind of material based landmarks and stuff. Like a
yeah,
lot of oranges and stuff like that from the basically like the essentially like the minerals and all that kind of stuff there.
yeah.
It's got
And
a
it's
bunch
also
of
beautiful as well. Can we
oh
talk
yeah,
about the
it's
fact that it's beautiful?
yeah, and it's got like a kind of like an underground city, and I mean that like the criminal underground type of thing.
Mhm.
Because it's kind of ruled by people and
Yeah,
whatnot. And you
it's
have the
not
different
Elden Ring. There's not a literal underground map.
yeah. And like it's got a bunch of cities and settlements and all that kind of stuff. People just trying to kind of like make it on their own. And it's got like it's got the city with the cantina and whatnot, and that's where you start to get to understand like the different factions because you have the Pikes, you have the Crimson Dawn, you've got the Huts, and there is a
Yeah,
fourth one, but you don't get that until after
a
you
bit
get to
later,
the
yeah.
next area.
And we'll talk about all of that in a minute, but I want before we sort of start digging into individual elements here, Jeff, as a summary based on what you've played so far, how are you feeling about the game?
It's really good. Like I will say, like it. My only critique right now of anything major is that the story actually doesn't start getting into itself until you get to the next area.
You're
Like,
sort of
or
several hours into the
yeah,
game, right?
until you get to where you are just about to go to the next area.
Yeah.
Because,
Because
like, once you get to Tarshara, if
mm,
you just kind of take on what is there and the missions and all that kind of stuff,
you
you
could
can
spend
literally
20
spend
hours there.
like 20 hours before you even have the main story
Yeah.
start.
And
Be-
also, let's say you don't have to. Like, you could golden path this game and come back to places later on. That there is an option for that. Um, so you're not kind of, it's not like once you leave somewhere you can't come back. At least I haven't experienced that so far. But
yeah.
Jeff, you are exactly right in the sense of I think I messaged you last night or something like that, and I was like, I could spend 25 hours just in this first
Well, like
planet that you
I've been
get to.
I've been doing like all of the missions that appear on the map, and some of the missions you get from like leaning on a counter and overhearing people and stuff like
Yeah.
that.
I
And they're like,
really
"Hey,
like
yeah,
that stuff though.
we left the cargo out on blah 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 blah
It,
blah,"
yeah.
and then you go and
And
get it.
so this is one thing I want to talk about because I'm with you as well. I'm actually playing on PC to be clear, whereas Jeff, I believe your code was for Xbox, right?
Yeah,
Um I have had some technical issues that I'll speak about a bit later, but I want to focus on the positives at the moment because I really, really like this game so
yeah, it's
far.
excellent. Like it's got
It's
some jank
yeah,
to it, and I don't know if
yeah.
it's stuff that's going to be
And what I
fixed
do
with
want to
a
make
day one
clear as
patch or anything.
well is that there are actually a lot of known issues at this current point
Yeah,
during the review period. So the team are already working on a lot of issues. So some of the issues that we are experiencing, you might never see. I've been fortunate enough that most of mine are really minor things. I've had one major thing that I will talk about later. But as I said, I want to talk about the positives. And from the moment I loaded up this game, something in my mind went, oh, this is going to be special. Because that first time that that logo shows up and the music starts playing and you see the menu design, it's just kind of like, this is Star Wars. They get it. Like they understand it. The whole UI of the game looks and feels like Star Wars to me. It's very, very good. And another thing which I think is important to mention on your initial setup of the game, as with many Ubisoft games these days and many other games as well, but Ubisoft is one of the best at this. There are so many accessibility options, and that is wonderful to see. Like, you have a lot of kind of presets that you can just select as I need visual aids, and it will kind of preset to things, or you can customize it to your very own specific needs. I think that's brilliant. There is something I noticed, however, and I don't know whether this is the same on the console. So, Jeff, you can confirm this to me, but the game does default to, at least on PC, to running in 21 by 9 aspect ratio with black bars
yeah,
at the
I
top
turned
and the
that off
bottom.
immediately.
Interesting, interesting. So I on PC am actually playing with the black bars at the top and the bottom.
Yeah,
Um,
like my TV's already widescreen, so I already
nice,
have
nice.
that ratio. I
I
can just
I
zoom in.
could so I could turn it off. The reason that I didn't is to do with frame rates, and I'll speak about that later. Um, but yeah, I was just honestly like, the music is superb as well. You know, like I said, in the menus on initial load up, and it made me feel like a big kid. I don't know what it was, but something about this game took me back to being a kid, and I just wanted to sit and, you talked about the cantinas. you'll go into a cantina and you'll hear people speaking, and you'll overhear conversations which will sometimes give you clues to a point of interest, or you might overhear something that leads to a mission by kind of sitting down or leaning on a side or whatever, and it feels a lot more dynamic. And Ubisoft have tried this stuff before in like Assassin's Creed with the I forget what they call it, but it was kind of like not the discovery mode, but it was kind of like we will give you hints of where to go
Yeah.
and then you have to find it yourself. What they've done here, I think, is probably the best open world designed Ubisoft game in quite some time.
I think
Because
Ubisoft, yeah.
although there's a lot to do, it's never overbearing because you'll be going around. Because one of the things we didn't speak about as well is you do have a ship, but you also get a speeder bike, right? And we've
Yeah.
seen this in the trailers. It controls quite well, that I find, which was surprising to me. um,
Yeah, and
but
it kind of comes to you almost like a horse in a lot of ways too, where you'll call
yeah,
it and stuff. But yeah.
yeah, kind of like you could in like Red Dead, right? You can just like call it over to you. That's really cool. But what I really like is you'll be going around and these question marks will pop up. So I know Jeff has a problem with this, more so than I do. But basically, the game, the way the navigation works, is that you effectively have a compass like you would in a Skyrim or a Starfield, and that is your only means of map and finding your way around.
Hmm.
You can look into a bigger map in the menu,
Constantly.
um,
Yeah.
but that's it doesn't have a mini map radar like a GTA or something. And I know Jeff would like it to have at least that option, right, Jeff?
Well, like, yeah, because like when you're trying to go somewhere and you're trying to follow the roads and whatnot, sometimes the roads aren't clearly defined.
Yeah.
When you're like on the map, you'll see them like they're usually like wide, and then half the time in the game they're just like a small little path. So
Yes.
yeah, like honestly, I would just love a mini map so that I know which
Mm.
roads I'm kind of like
And I
taking
do
to get where I
think,
need to go.
and to be fair, although it hasn't bothered my personal experience with the game, I do think that it would be a really good accessibility option to have, because some people will not be able to use that compass very well.
Yeah, like
But
I'm
what
constantly bringing up the map like to an annoying degree.
but what I do like is that you'll be going around, and even if you do look on the map like Jeff's saying, you will have things pop up on your map, like when you've heard a hint about some sort of cave being over somewhere, it will give you a general area of where the cave is or something like that. But what you'll have is, rather than loads of question marks just populating your map all over the place like Assassin's Creed would, they now don't populate your map, but they'll show up on your radar, on your like compass when you're going around.
Yeah.
And it's only when you get near to them, and it'll be, oh, there's a point of interest over here, and you do, and sometimes you'll go and you'll discover something really neat. Like, I've stumbled on so many interesting things, and sometimes I've stumbled into places that is like, oh, I clearly shouldn't be here yet because I don't have the thing I need to get to where I need to get to. But that's another thing I really want to talk about, because I think they've done it so well, and it's not revolutionary, but the way that progression works in this game and the way that you actually improve yourself, to me, is great. Like, there isn't a skill tree, which I'm surprised to say, because there are skills in this game, but it's not a traditional you level up, get a skill point, and choose the skill that you want, like many other Ubisoft games and other open world games. This is more like you will get these side quests, and there is one early on that you have to find as part of the main quest, but you'll basically get these quests to go and find what are called brokers, right, Jeff?
Yeah.
And these brokers will specialize in a certain thing. So one of the early ones, for example,
You mean
will
the
help you.
experts, not brokers?
Oh yeah, sorry, yes, not the brokers,
Yeah,
the
brokers give you
experts.
jobs, but experts
Brokers give
are
you the jobs. Yes,
central characters to the
there's a
story.
lot of terms in this game. I do apologize. So the experts, you will find them, and they will be for a very specific type of thing. So, for example, one of the early ones is to do with your speeder, right? And she will provide you speeder upgrades and things like that. And you can get speeder upgrades from other mechanics and things, but she has specific skills that you can unlock with the speeder and other kind of skills to help you as well. One of them, for example, is a nitro style boost, right? It's basically a boost that you can use. Another one that you unlock is the ability to jump over certain rocks and things like that while on the speeder. So you can perform a
Yeah, I
small
don't like
jump.
how you have to hold it down because I mean, if you're going really, really fast and you see a rock, you're probably not going to have the time to like hold it down and do a jump.
Yeah. However, what I like is, as I've said, the way you unlock these is not through kind of leveling up and getting skill points. It's through doing things in the game, and that can range from performing certain actions to getting enough of certain resources, and some resources you can only get from certain places. But also, what I really like about these experts is each of them has, so far at least, in my opinion, some sort of interesting story, right? So they might have done something and now they live out on their own because the people that they were living with don't agree with the decision they made. And then you hear more about what that decision was and why they made it as you're kind of first meeting them, because you will do a story quest involving them. And then sometimes with some of these experts, you'll actually have kind of two or three story quests that you'll do to get different things. So it'll be like, go and get this thing that I left over here. And then it'll say meet me in this place, and it makes the side content, in my opinion, feel a lot more meaningful in this game, because all of the side content, and we'll talk about the syndicates in a minute, which help with that as well, but all of the side content just feels like it all has meaning and it all has purpose so
Yeah,
far.
like there's still some filler in terms of like, like the treasures and stuff, the things
Yeah,
where it's just like go find a treasure thing and stuff.
yeah,
Um,
that's true. That's true.
but yeah, like a lot of the side stuff has a lot of character. Just because
And I
like
mean, you maxed out one of those syndicates, didn't you? So you did a
oh
lot of
yeah,
side stuff.
yeah, it doesn't take that long because you get these like once you get a certain allegiance with the Pikes or the Crimson Dawn or whatever, you can reach out to a broker and they're going to be like, "Hey, I got missions for you." And then once you get your ship, you get even more missions because they need you to go off world or in
Yeah.
space and go
Mhm.
through like derelict ships and all that kind of stuff. Um, but yeah, like you get those missions and then those will appear on any of the planets, and some of them will be like, hey, I got a mission for you on Tatooine. Like, well, okay, well, I'm not there yet, so I have to hold off on that. And you can pick three at a time, and then they'll get you like uh,
Mhm.
gold or sorry, credits.
Yeah.
And then sometimes they'll get you like outfits and pieces and things like that, and
Mhm.
sometimes you'll find those outfits and pieces like in the world, but they'll be in territory that are controlled by certain factions.
And also,
So there's a jacket I haven't got yet.
what I like about these factions is that your relationships are very dynamic, as far as I'm aware. So it's not like, for example, Jeff has maxed out the Crimson Dawn
But
relationship,
they're not
but
maxed anymore.
yeah, this is what I was going to say, because you can, if you decide to help another faction, that might damage your relationship with one of the others. So there is kind of this nice dynamic element to it. And yes, these relationships are affected by those contracts you can get from the brokers, but sometimes there's also sort of more dynamic things that happen, like we were talking about. You might hear like a whisper of, oh, I've got I've left some treasure over here, and the pikes are going to be picking it up, and then you can go and kind of steal it, and that might cause a problem for you. Or, sometimes what I really like about this game is that you will be walking along in a city, just which we haven't talked about too much, but these, at least this first city that you come to on Tashara, felt really alive to me, like very, very alive. And there was a lot going on, a lot of conversations going on. And you would have people sort of say, oh, hey, like there will be people that shout to you, and they might have a small request.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty typical open world stuff. Like we've seen this stuff before.
Yeah. And
Um,
that goes back to what I was saying before, where I'm not sure this game is doing, at least based on what we've played so far, I'm not sure that this game is doing anything particularly unique for open world games in general.
yeah.
But I do think that based on what I've seen, this does seem like an evolution for Ubisoft style open world games.
Yeah, it's different than what Ubisoft normally does because like as K-Bears, you're not like climbing up towers and like unlocking like map
Yeah.
points or anything like that because that just would have been the nail in the coffin on this game.
Oh yeah, can you
Um,
imagine?
but like some of the open world elements, like I don't think the cities are like um I don't think they are as dynamic as they could be because the only conversations that are really happening are the stuff that is apparent to like your little side quests and things. So there aren't too many instances where people are just having traditional conversations and stuff. Like you'll get little bits and pieces, but I don't
Hmm.
think it is as busy and hustle
They
and
could
bustle as
do
that.
more with it, right? They
Yeah,
definitely
and
could
like
do more.
there's a I can't remember which cantina it is, but I went in there and there was a band playing, but there was no music.
Oh,
They were just
interesting.
on they're on stage just rocking, and I'm like, all I hear is
Huh.
like dum, 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 dum. Like there was nothing, and the guy's like singing and stuff. It the,
Because I went
the
in one place. If it's the same place that I'm thinking of, when I went in there, there was music playing.
Yeah, but I mean, like the band on stage was playing stuff that was lively and like full of energy, and it looked like the guy was like singing and stuff like
Oh
that.
yeah.
And then the music that was playing was
So it
just this
didn't
like
fit.
low
It didn't
hum
actually
kind of
fit.
like
Yeah.
beats, and it
Mhm.
just didn't match it at all. Whereas in something like
Yeah.
Jedi Survivor, when you have the people playing at the cantina there or whatever, it's
Yeah.
completely as it should be.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but yeah, like the cantinas and stuff are fun and whatnot, and then
Mhm.
that's where you meet up a lot of the factions and
How do
stuff like
you?
that.
So we've talked about some of the systems and everything, but now I want to talk about the actual gameplay, because there is an element to gameplay that everyone might think from the trailers, oh, that probably won't matter. I won't make much use of that. But I feel like, maybe it's just me, but I feel like the ultimate tool at your disposal in this game is Nyx, right?
Yeah,
Your little alien pal Nyx, who can open doors for you, he can destroy alarms for you. You can use him to distract enemies, and he plays dead, and it's like, that's just really funny. um, or he can attack enemies, and then you can run up and do basically like a finishing move on them. And as long as nobody else is around, you haven't been seen, right? Because the mission structure of this game, there are quite a few missions where you're not allowed to be seen.
yeah.
And if you are seen, you actually fell and have
Well,
to
yeah, sometimes
play
it's
again.
not so much that if you're actually seen, is that if the alarm goes off, because there are times where like a guy will see you and you've accidentally hit the punch button wrong, and then you have to like slug him out, and then someone will see
Yes.
you and you can send Nix, and then you basically do that as long as the alarm doesn't go off.
Yeah.
Um,
But there are certain, I guess, with the syndicates, there are those areas where if you get seen, depending on your relationship with that particular syndicate, they will throw you out, right? So
Yeah, see, like I was at like excellent with Crimson Dawn, and
okay.
I still had to sneak into one of their bases, and then I ended up getting
Oh.
the jacket without being seen, without anything. And then when I went back out, everyone had respawned, and I couldn't get out,
Oh no.
so I had to reload like about an hour back. Um,
Oh
Whereas
no.
when I'm on the next planet that you go to after Kashara, as soon as I got good, I could go into that area with those people, and it was no problem whatsoever. So it was a
That's
little weird.
that's that is interesting, yeah. Um but yeah, like gameplay wise, I really like making use of Nyx. He's very, very useful. I do also, because I wasn't expecting this, but his skills can also be upgraded through gameplay. And some of these gameplay elements are things that you might not even think to do. So, one of the things I said to Jeff last night is, have you sat down and had a meal yet? Right? And basically, in the marketplaces or sometimes just on the street, like in Kajimi, which is one of the places you go to, as you're kind of just walking up the main street, there's like this robot guy on a food stand and he's making food. And these robot food stands you can sit down at and have a meal. And there's like a little mini game that ensues where you're getting them to eat the meal, Nix and K. But these meals provide Nix with different skills. So one of them, for example, if you equipped that to him as, I forget what they call it, but it's basically like a charm for Nyx
Hmm.
as his favorite meal. And if you equip that to him, he will kick grenades away from K just
Oh, okay.
automatically. Um, so these mills do that, but also you'll have skills like I unlocked one yesterday, and this was from one of the experts, where after getting Nyx to perform like 7 different actions or something, I unlocked the ability now where he can basically put a trap on an alarm. So instead of just sabotaging it, he can now trap it so that when they try and activate it, they will get electrocuted.
Hmm.
So I like that his abilities can also be upgraded based on the gameplay and based on certain things that you find. And he has some adorable outfits that you can put on him as well.
Oh yeah, I'm working to get that scarf right now. So, I mean, he's Nyx is definitely a more involved companion than BD1. Um,
Yeah.
like I think that from a gameplay point of view, is if you've played Jedi Survivor, that breaks a lot of the ground that's kind of here already. Because like
Yeah.
we're told that Star Wars Outlaws is the first open world Star Wars game and all that kind of stuff. But like in a lot of ways, Jedi Survivor kind of has a lot of those traits still, because like you have
Yeah.
Kobo, which is the hub world in Jedi
Even though it
Survivor,
isn't fully open world, right? That's the thing, yeah.
but it's a massive area.
Yeah.
Like that's the thing about it, is like it's still a massive area. And it's hard to really say like too much open world, because like you take a look at like Outlaws and the what is it, the planet, I can't remember the name,
Toshara?
Toshara. Like Toshara is like fairly sizable, and it has a whole bunch of stuff, and it definitely does echo more open world stuff. But I think like a lot of what you're doing gameplay wise is still kind of still borrowed in a lot of ways from Jedi Survivor. You
Mhm.
basically approach an area, there's platforming challenges to get where you need to go. The only thing is
Yeah.
you're doing them as the scoundrel and not as a Jedi. So you aren't like pulling something with the
So
force
the way
powers
that
and
you're
then jumping.
tackling
Yeah.
certain elements are
You're doing
different.
it in more of a like an uncharted way, where like you have like things like
A
a grappling
grappling
hook
hook.
and things that you can get that way, or you're
Mm.
using a speeder to jump over and get to where you're going. Like it feels like the kind of the uncharted type of like platforming and moving
Yeah.
around because like you have grates to climb
Mhm.
and rock faces and all that kind of stuff.
I do like
But
that some of this traversal has like some of these traversal and puzzle-ish elements to them is like they have these dynamic elements, right? So it's not just like, oh, swing over here and it'll be fine. Do it at any moment you like. There's sometimes there's like enemies looking for you while you're doing it, or there's a droid that's gonna go past or whatever. So you do have to sort of be tactical within the
yeah, see,
traversal
to me,
as well.
it's still the same thing as like Uncharted, where you're essentially like
It is,
hiding
yeah.
in cover and hiding and all that kind of stuff. And then it
Mm.
still has those moments where it's kind of like, all right, we've made it. And then you do something, and then the ground collapses under your feet, like Nathan Drake style. And like it has those elements to it.
It does, and it
Um,
has set pieces as well, right? There
yeah,
are set piece style moments in the game, but I really quite enjoy those things. And if we go back to the gameplay for a moment, you obviously do not have a lightsaber because you are not a Jedi, but you do have a blaster,
yeah,
and this blaster will get different modules over time. So you start off with just your standard blaster, which can be used against kind of standard human non-droid enemies, right? And that's okay. Obviously, it's got that overheating element to it, and there is almost like this Gears of War style thing where
reload
if you can
system,
stop it
which you
at the
can
right
turn
moment,
on by so that it automatically does it through the accessibility settings. So
yes,
if you just want to blast, 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 and then have it automatically do it, you can
yes,
do that as well. And then
yeah,
there's different tiers when you upgrade it. So like
mhm,
there'll be a reload thing where it goes like blue and then orange and then blue.
yes, yeah,
And then you can
and
change the polarities of the rifle as well. So if there's
yeah,
enemies with shielding, you can switch to the polarity that blasts through their shield and switch back and
yeah,
then shoot and kill them.
yeah, and one thing to say as well is that part of so there is a slight I agree with you about kind of the recent EA Jedi games having a lot of the same DNA in their gameplay because there is even a Metroidvania element to this game
Kind of, yeah.
in the sense that there are certain places on planets that you cannot get to until you have certain abilities or things that you will get later on in the
Yeah,
game.
it's like
For
a
example,
fusion
you get
cutter still need to get or whatever.
you get
Um,
like the power shot. Have you picked that one up yet?
I think I just got that because if that's the one that the droid on the cover of the game goes like, "Hey, come back to the ship.
Yeah.
I got this for
Yeah,
you," and
yeah.
then you
Yeah.
go to your table and craft it. Like,
Is that
I
one. Yeah.
I do wish, however, that and this to me is a complete missed opportunity when
Interesting.
you're playing as Cal Kestis and you're making your lightsaber, you're picking little bits and pieces and all that kind of stuff. I
Yeah.
wish that the upgrades that you got on your pistol and your gun were little visual updates
Made a more visual difference,
to
yeah.
make it so that your gun looked different than your gun. My gun looked different than
Because because on the ship, I don't know if you've upgraded the ship at all yet, but they do actually make a somewhat visual difference. Not as much as I would like, but
yeah,
for example, when you change the engines, they actually look different. Like the engines look
yeah,
different. When you change the guns on the front of the ship, they look different. But with the actual blaster itself, it's K's blaster. That's how it looks. You can get cosmetic like
yeah,
skins for it, but they don't do anything, which is interesting because the other cosmetics in the game, such as um, the jacket, trousers, and kind of the belt for the belt there for the blaster, they will have gameplay elements to them in the sense of maybe they help you to do more damage. Maybe
yeah.
they help
They
you,
reduce your cooldowns or like prevent
yeah.
fall damage and things like that.
And and there are also almost like cosmetic sets, right? So there's one that Jeff had for a little while, I imagine, which was the Crimson Dawn set,
Oh, that
where
suit is so gorgeous. Like, honestly,
Where
I was kind of wishing that like the part for Nyx would have been like a small little black jacket or something as well too.
that would have been great.
But no, like yeah, like so how we'll backtrack a tiny little bit here.
Go on.
The factions and stuff like that basically have tiers to your kind of allegiance, essentially, to a certain point. Bad word used, but you get rewards based off those tiers. So the first one you get is like a gun skin, and then you get a bunch of like items, and then the last thing is you get like an entire armor set for all of it. So like this isn't the type of game where you have to pick one faction and go all the way. Like I'm going, like my intent essentially is to do enough side content that I can work my way into getting all of those outfits. And then some outfits are in territory of those people, so then you'll have to like go in and probably risk some reputation to get a jacket or whatever the case is. And then some of them, like when I get on Kajimi, there's a survivalist set
Yeah.
that will give you certain perks if you have all of those.
Yes.
And the armor set for the Kajimi faction is this like really fancy kind of like white parka kind of winter outfit that
Yeah.
looks great. And then Nyx gets a little white scarf.
The scarf. Yeah.
Um, yeah, it's amazing.
So I do like the cosmetics. I will say that I was a bit disappointed by the if you have the Ultimate Edition, which we
Yeah,
were both given, or the Deluxe Edition, you should get some cosmetics with your version of the game as DLC. Unfortunately, those don't have any gameplay effect. Those
and they're
outfits,
boring. Like, oh, you can dress as Han Solo and Lando Calrissian. Big freaking
yeah,
deal. And then like the Boba Fett one is kind of like if Adidas did a Boba Fett line. They're like, oh, it's green and red and it's got some yellow and white highlights and blah blah
yeah,
blah. And it's
yeah.
like
They
I
could
wore
have
that
done
one
some more
for a little
interesting
while.
things. They could
Yeah,
have
like
done
they're
some more interesting things.
yeah, like you could have had
Yeah,
the uh the bounty hunter outfit that Princess
yeah.
Leia wore in Return of the Jedi.
What I will say is, I wish that there was a transmog system because, as far as I can tell, there isn't.
There
But
there is
for
for the outfits. Like you can change your appearance. You
no,
just
you can. But what I'm saying is, like, say that I want an outfit set. Say that, for example, I want the Crimson Dawn outfit set
yeah.
in look, but I don't necessarily want their perks. I don't think there's a way to make one outfit set look like another outfit set. Is there?
There's a yeah, when you're on the jacket, you can press Y and then that
Oh,
changes your appearance. And then you pick the other jacket that you want it to look like.
oh, okay. I didn't know you could do that. I missed that option.
Yeah, I think it
That's good
might
to
just be on
know.
the jacket. I don't know if it's on the pants. I'm not 100% sure, but probably. Um,
Interesting.
yeah, like there's a lot there, and like you'll find those kind of anywhere. And like the other cosmetics and stuff is like you can make what you can change what like the engine
Yeah,
color of your shell, the Trailblazer. Like you can
yeah.
change like what the color is, and you can do that with the speeder as well. And I like how like you can get these trophies for the speeders that hang off the side, like
It's
in The
like
Witcher, where you can
helmets and
put like
stuff.
yeah, like you get like a stormtrooper helmet on there. So you just rock up to like the Empire, and you're like, guess what I just
we
bagged.
and that's actually transitions perfectly to what I want to talk about next, and that is that because you are not a Jedi, the Empire feel like a genuine threat in this game. Like, you cannot go in all guns blazing against the Empire. You are
You
going to
can, but
die.
yeah, and then eventually you get like death troopers sent after you. They never come to me. I always have to go to them, and I don't know what
Oh,
it is.
interesting. I've never got to that point yet. I've never committed that many crimes. So the way the Empire works in this game is that because you will have to encounter them on several occasions, depending on what missions you choose to do. But they are like the police in GTA to a certain extent, in the sense of if you commit crimes against them, you gain a wanted level, and this wanted level will disappear eventually if you avoid them for long enough. But obviously, the more that this wanted level goes up, the harder it becomes to avoid them. but there is another way to get rid of them. There's actually two ways. You can hack one of their terminals.
Yeah.
Some of these terminals are out in space, and we'll talk about flying around in the ship in a minute. Um, and also you'll find some Imperial guards that just want some credits,
Yeah,
basically.
they
And
just wanna be bribed. And, like,
if
the
you
the the hacking stuff is pretty good. I will
Mm,
say that I turned off, the like, the
the
hacking game
symbols,
no, the hacking game where you kinda spin the things with the
oh yeah,
rhythm. I turned that off entirely after, like, doing it 10 times, and I'm like, "Okay, I'm
oh
done with that." So I just turned it so I can just go and then it opens. Like,
oh
I
right,
turned that off 'cause
interesting. I
I just got
actually quite
tired of
like it.
that mini game.
I
No,
actually quite like
it
it.
it's a fine mini game, but with
Mm.
how often that you're doing it, I don't wanna do that mini game 87 times.
That's fair. And also the other thing is with that mini game, so the way it works is you will stick. I forget what it's called, but Kay has this thing that she wears as a hairpin that she will basically put into these locks,
Yeah,
and there'll be a yellow light, and it will blink in a certain rhythm. And if you press the right trigger, uh, at the right time in time with the rhythm, you will unlock the lock. And what happens is you are doing it a lot, and there are several different rhythms you will encounter,
yeah,
but many of these locks will also have the same rhythm. So once you get to the point where you know what the rhythm is, you
yeah,
will eventually kind of do it really
and
quick anyway.
it's the same lock that you see R2-D2, open all the time, that spinny kind of one. And then the other one is where you're hacking, like, servers and
It's
different types of
basically
Imperial
Wordle, the
things.
hacking game, right?
Yeah, it's basically you'll have 4 to 5 symbols, and you'll pick basically from a selection of, like, white icons, and then it'll be like, blue is in the right spot, red is in the r is doesn't exist, and then yellow is just in the wrong spot.
Yeah,
And you can switch it so that it's numbers. You can do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever.
yeah,
The icons, and then there's icons later on that have, like, blue connecting paths that I don't quite
yes,
understand what those are. Um, but then, like, you can change it in the accessibility settings so that you can get more chances to get
yeah,
that
you can. You
that
can. Because
that
the way it works is kind of, if you've played Wordle, it's kind of like that. You have so many chances. I
yeah.
really think this mini game was inspired by Wordle.
Oh,
Like,
probably.
I really do. You have so many chances, but the weird thing with this one is you can actually fail it once or twice. So you'll have like
Yeah. I
it'll
think you
be a
just get less money or
yeah,
something.
it'll be like a grid of squares, and then you'll have so many that are completely white squares, and those are your free chances effectively. And then when you get down to the red squares, but what's interesting is on some of these locks, if you fail it too many times, I believe you are actually completely locked out of that lock. So it, but I haven't encountered any yet that are difficult enough where I would ever fail them enough times, because you always seem to have just about the right number of symbols to figure out within kind of one failure at the absolute worst. It's yeah, it's interesting. I do like that one. I really do like that one. And you can, the hacking machine, which is called the slicer, that machine can actually be upgraded
Yeah.
to
Mm.
give you different things that you can activate during the hacking to make it a little bit easier for yourself. So that's interesting as well. Although I've upgraded the machine, but I haven't used it since at this current time. So, it's going to be interesting to see how that actually works. And then there's lots of other gameplay things to talk about, but I do want to talk about the ship, because I think that this is an area where some people will be disappointed and some people will be really happy. So the first thing to say is that the way you get on and off planet functions very similarly to Starfield, in the
Uh,
sense that
I'm gonna say no.
hold on, hold on.
Okay.
in the sense that it's essentially a loading screen, but it it is better than Starfield because it's an actual animation and not
Yeah.
you're not literally popping out to a loading screen.
You're not flying to a JPEG essentially,
Yeah,
and then cutting to like just a ship landing. Like you can take off and then immediately go to space, and it's one long transition. So it's more like No
yeah,
Man's Sky,
yeah.
in regards to
But
how that
you are not
works.
controlling part of that transition. That's the thing. Whereas in
No,
No Man's Sky,
but
you are.
it still makes it feel like you are going
I
from the planet
agree,
to
and
space, which
that's
I
that.
never got that in Starfield.
Yeah, and that's exactly why I say it reminded me somewhat of Starfield in the functionality part of it, but the immersion part of it is so much better here, and
Yeah,
the
I do
way
have
that
to.
they've handled it is
I
good.
think I still have to figure out and tweak the flying controls. However, I might be too late on that. Just because like
Interesting.
I spin around sometimes too much because I press like left and right on the left analog stick, and that tilts your ship.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Um, so like
Sometimes I've turned completely upside down, and I'm like, why have I done
yeah,
that?
like I do wish the ship combat was either like exactly like Chorus or Everspace 2. I think the ship combat is very very good.
I
Um,
think is good. Yeah, I think it's
Yeah,
good.
but, like, again, and a lot of that's gonna come from the more options that you get, because like,
Yeah.
there's, I think, like, 3 tiers of cannons, and I think there's,
Mhm.
like, different things in between each one. There's different
Yeah, so
engines and
I've just
all
unlocked
that stuff.
one cannon. So you get missiles. So you basically get missiles which are on a. I actually can't figure out how they function exactly because I've
So
managed to use them a few times, but it
when
doesn't
you
always
see an
lock
enemy
on.
and you see an enemy, it'll take a little while, and then a little A will pop up, and then you press
Mm,
A, and then that will fire off the missile to that. So it's kind of a lock-on system that visually doesn't really give you much information. Um,
interesting. Okay, that makes
but
sense.
no, the space combat's fine. Like you're not getting overwhelmed. Like you're not fighting like 10 or 15 things at once. You're generally just
Yeah.
fighting like two, three, four things.
And
Um,
it does get hard though, in the sense that if you don't upgrade your ship, there are ships that will destroy
yeah.
you. Like I encountered a big ship uh last night when I was playing, and it actually had weak points on it. This was the
Okay.
first time I've seen this so far, but it was a bigger, almost like a cruiser, if you will, and it had, big guns on it. It had like a bit that I had to hit to try and get the shielding deactivated and that kind of thing.
Hmm.
So it did have these weak points that I had to. It was much bigger than my ship, and I had to fly around this ship to try and target these points, but then I was like, no, it's gonna blow me up. So I just boosted away as quickly as
Yeah.
I could. You do also sort of repair your ship, or should I say reactivate your shields by pressing down on the D-pad, I believe it is, if you're damaged.
Yeah.
Um, which is interesting because I don't know if that's connected to having a certain resource or whether it is you just have to basically
I think
wait
you
for
get
it
a
to
yeah, I think it's like a
load.
cooldown. I haven't played
Mm,
too much with it because I've been mostly just kind of like going using space to get to point A and point B. My
yeah.
next thing I'm going to be doing today is basically exploring a lot of the areas and tackling a lot of the stuff because you'll find like derelict
Mm,
ships and you'll find like these like treasure caches in
yeah.
space where a ship is blown up
And
and
there
there's
will
yellow
actually be
canisters.
quests given to you that you have to go to outer space of a certain planet to do. And
Yeah,
and this is what I mean. So when I say it's like Starfield as well to some degree, you're not flying straight from one planet to the other like you would in, say, like No Man's Sky.
yeah,
You are using in Star Wars fashion, which makes sense. You charge up your hyperdrive. There are certain occasions where you can't use your hyperdrive,
yeah.
and then once the hyperdrive is charged, you press forward on both sticks at the same time to basically activate an animation. There was one part I really liked about this, and I'm not going to spoil the actual details of what was said, but it does seem like during the main quest, as you're kind of transitioning through big moments, and maybe where the main quest is making you leave certain planets or whatever, you will get almost like while you're hyperdriving, you will get a little bit of text to tell you what has just happened, almost like you would in a Star Wars movie, right? Kind of.
Yeah, I noticed that the first time I went to Kajime or whatever, where it's like
Yeah.
blah 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 and blah 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 did this and yada yada yada. And I'm like, yeah, I was there, dude.
Yeah. But I just, from a presentational standpoint, I quite like that because it felt fitting with Star Wars, like to me. Um, yeah. So you do the hyperdrive. You like I said, there are outer space things to do, but the majority of what you're going to be doing in this game is on the surface of the planets. I think,
Yeah,
based on what I've experienced so far. But
and I
it's
do like
nice
how
to have
there's
that
a
option.
map of the actual town. Imagine that.
Yes. Yeah, so when you actually go into the map, yeah, even though you don't have a mini map, you do have an actual map of the town with fast travel points. And I have to say, I try not to use these because I actually do like exploring these worlds so far. They're
Yeah,
really cool. But the fast travel is really quick, like very, very quick.
yeah. I mean,
Where
it's not Spider-Man quick, but it is
it's
still quick.
probably Ghost of Tsushima quick though. If you played Ghost of Tsushima, it's probably that level of quick.
I think I played that like 4 or 5 years ago, whenever it came out. So I have no idea.
Yeah, it's definitely not Spider-Man 2 quick, but it is, yeah, it's very quick, and it is useful if you're particularly, you know, if you get sucked into a certain quest line and you're like, because there will be certain quests where you have to go back and forth, and sometimes there is quite a distance to cover. So if you're particularly focusing on a
Yeah,
quest,
I'm definitely using the fast travel, like quite a bit, because like I mean, like I am exploring like every nook and cranny of the cities and all that kind of stuff. But then eventually, like the you know the the discoveries are finite, right? So
yeah.
like eventually at that point, I'm like, I'm just gonna fast travel to the
Mhm.
cantina. I'm just gonna fast travel to this. I'm gonna fast travel
Yeah,
to that. Like,
yeah, yeah.
I haven't been able to like fast travel to like too many places like outside in the world. Just usually back to the cities and stuff like that.
Yeah. There are a few fast travel points outside in the open world
Yeah,
area,
they're always
but
locked.
oh, interesting. So the only time that I find that they're locked is if you're in a hostile area. So you can't fast travel while you are in a hostile area, which
Yeah,
I
and
assume
sometimes
means that you
and
also
sometimes when
can't fast
it's
travel into one.
yeah, and
Yeah.
sometimes when it's like story based, if you need to go down like a certain hallway, it'll lock
Yeah.
it. The other games do this as well.
Yes. Yeah. Of course. Is there any other gameplay specific elements that you'd like to talk about, Jeff?
Um, yeah, sure. So like you'll have your pistol and whatnot, but there are a lot of different guns that you can kind of pick up as well too that are kind of scattered about, or if they've dropped from someone else, or if they're on a weapon rack. So there's sniper rifles, there's rotary cannons, saddle blasters, heavy repeaters, phase pulse short rifles. Like there's basically a lot of that stuff there. This game's got a lot of stealth mechanics. However, the stealth is generally just crouching behind certain things or crouching behind certain things. You're not like going prone and crawling under any things like that. You can use nicks to like pickpocket as well too. There's cameras, so you can have them distract a camera and then move around its field of vision. There's that kind of stuff there. But
There's also elements that you would find typical of a stealth game, like for example long grass, or what I do like in the indoor areas is that you will sometimes get these vents with lots of smoke, and they effectively act the same as long grass, where if you're in the smoke, it's much harder for the enemies to see you. Unlike other games, though, they will still be able to see you if they get close enough.
yeah,
So you
and
have
like
to bear that in mind as well.
you do have the Batman detective vision in the Nyx sense.
Yes.
So Nyx will basically like pulse, whatever, and Kay will be like, "Hey, what do you see, boy?" And then like
Yeah,
you'll see like
and that
outlines of certain things.
yeah, because that also gets upgraded. Because initially, it only highlights like enemies, like other people,
Well,
but then
it'll it'll
eventually
highlight.
it will highlight the like treasure boxes and stuff as well.
Well, yeah, I could be wrong, but I thought it always did. But if you are close to something, Nix will automatically trigger it to
Oh, okay,
see the
yeah,
chat.
maybe. Yeah, that might be what it is. Yeah, you might be right on that one.
Because like if you're near a treasure
Mm,
chest and walk past it after you get the
yeah,
upgrade, Nix will make a sound
yeah.
and it'll start glowing blue.
Oh, and also, the other thing to say about these weapons that you were talking about that you can pick up is once they run out and you drop them.
Yeah,
But also, if you see one across a room or you shoot an enemy with your blaster and he drops a weapon, you can send Nix to go and get that weapon for you. Like,
yeah.
he will go and pick the weapon up and bring it back to you. So that stuff's really useful as well. Um, yeah, I do think that, you know, there is a lot of opportunity to not play in stealth in this game as well, but there is a heavy focus on stealth, at least in the early hours of the game. So I think that if you're not a fan of stealth games, then you may struggle with this one, or it may not be to your
And you can
liking.
get like charms, I think, that help with stealth and all that kind of stuff too.
Yeah, because you
Um,
can, and that's what we were talking about, right? About how obviously Nyx can be upgraded with the mills, but Kay can also have her own charms. I actually haven't found any for Kay yet, any charms, but she can get charms
yeah,
that have a gameplay
I
impact.
found a few. I did just confirm there is transmog.
Nice. Thank you for checking that. That's good to know. Because now I can look how I want to look, which is cool. um, there was another small detail, and this isn't a gameplay thing, but as we kind of transition to other aspects of the game to talk about here, when I went to Kajimi, there was something that blew my mind, and it's not because I haven't seen it before. It's just because I didn't expect it in a Ubisoft game, I think. But it was the fact that over time, Kay's jacket, which was still the standard jacket I was wearing at the time, got covered in snow. Like like absolutely just covered, and it's like that's a nice dynamic weather element that
Yeah,
seems to be new to Ubisoft games. Um So that, from a visual standpoint, we spoke about it before, but I really do think this is a beautiful game. Like the environments, I think even the characters, again, are a step up from what we would normally expect in a Ubisoft game. There are obviously high quality cutscenes that are slightly different because they're pre-rendered and they
yeah, you can tell. Like I do like how they still have like the outfits and stuff you're wearing.
yeah, they do. But the quality of those pre-rendered scenes is very high as you'd expect. And then when you get other smaller sort of conversation scenes that are actually in game, uh they do not look quite as good, but I still find myself thinking that they are a big step up for Ubisoft. They they the dead eyes seem to have disappeared. Like the dead eyes seem to have gone, which is nice. Um, yeah, I'm very very impressed by this game so far. I I guess now we should talk about the aspects that we really have more issues with, right? Which is technical things, I guess. So,
Yeah,
Jeff, why don't you talk first? Because I know that you've had some people sort of walking through you in conversation scenes and other sorts of weird things, right?
yeah. Like I've had like a cutscene where I'm chatting with somebody and then basically someone just kind of like walks through me. I've had just little moments like that. I've had the game crash once. Um, although the load game was fine. I do kind of wish that the autosaves broke up a little in advance as well, because sometimes, like, when you get to a certain area, that load save or the autosave will encompass that entire area.
Mhm.
Um, but no, like
Because
there's a
also
little
you
bit
are
of
limited. Talking about saves, you are limited to when you can manually save, right? Have you noticed
yeah,
this?
yeah,
Like,
you can't you can't essentially be in any type of peril.
yeah,
You have to be kind of like outside of certain areas. It has to be kind of calm, but your autosave will kind of make up for that to a certain extent.
yeah,
Um, there is like a little bit of jankiness to it. Like there was a you can press the right stick in and then use your grappling hook to propel down, and basically like where you have the cliff and used it and then went down. There's one time where she went like up and then I just fell.
oh wow, okay.
Like and I mean you get fall damage and then you use your little like Bacta like drink thing and whatever
Yeah.
syringe, and then or the vial.
Mhm.
Um, like I've had like there's a little bit of jankiness to some of the animations, just in terms of like they're I don't think they have solid transitions from some things to the other.
Interesting, interesting.
Um, just little things and stuff. Like I've seen people like commenting on Twitter, like, "Oh, the animations kind of look clunky," and I'm like, to a certain extent, maybe.
Mm,
They've never really bothered me or anything like that. Like, the nice thing
yeah,
about
I
this
mean,
game is
obviously,
it's
me,
not overly animated. Like I'm not falling off of like like they'll have these platforming things where these pistons shoot out and then you have to hop across those. I'm
yes,
never overrunning or over jumping, which is nice. I do hate how like when you speed down a ladder, you actually won't speed down to the ground. You'll speed down to a certain point and then she'll jump off.
yes,
Um,
yeah,
and I absolutely hate climbing up a ladder or climbing over something and she'll stand up instead of immediately crouch.
yeah, mhm,
So you'll
yeah,
get
yeah,
spotted like doing that stuff.
yeah,
Like especially when you come out of a ladder, because sometimes you'll face away from the threats, and then all of
yeah,
a sudden they're like, "Hey, look where she is!" And I'm like, "Oh, fuck
yeah,
off."
yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I agree with that. That's frustrating, especially when it's like you've crouched up to the point where you've got on the ladder.
yeah,
There should be something they can do to allow the game to remember that you have crouched, or
or
they
just
should
automatic
adjust.
crouch when
Yeah,
you get up to the top part there, because then you can uncrouch. Like there's little things like that. Um,
yeah.
but yeah, like no, it's I wish the enemies were a little sometimes a little bit more apparent. Like the readability on them in some areas and some environments is really bad. Like you
Oh,
can
yeah.
target them if you back up and use your binoculars and target them and all that kind of stuff. But when
Yes.
you're like at a farm and you're getting attacked by a whole bunch of pirates and
Mhm.
bandits, whatever, that have shown up, sometimes the environments and stuff kind of hide them.
Yes,
Now you
that's
can
true.
see on the compass at the top where the red dots are and all that kind
Mhm.
of stuff, so you know what kind of what direction. But there's so many times where I'm just getting like blindsided by something or whatever. But I mean, again, like like none of it's bad. Like I'm not like
It's kind of minor stuff, right? It's kind
yeah,
of
like
minor stuff that
it
all
is
adds up.
minor stuff. But no, like ultimately this game is absolutely fantastic. Like
Yeah.
this is it. I'm not going to say it's out of character for Ubisoft, but it doesn't feel like an Ubisoft game.
Of at
Um,
least the recent years, right?
yeah, like it doesn't feel like that. I mean, it's a long way from when Ubisoft was the publisher on the VIP game. So I mean, it's you're not getting like old school Ubisoft there or anything like that. Like this isn't crazy publisher Ubisoft where they're like, yeah, we'll
This
publish
feel
anything.
to me, the way that for people who are longtime Ubisoft fans, this game to me feels like the kind of quality that we would have expected from Ubisoft in that in that original trilogy of Assassin's Creed games, or back to like the early Splinter Cell days, for example, where they just had they knew what they wanted to make, and that is what they made. This feels like a very focused product to me. Um, I do want to talk about some of my issues because I was playing on PC.
Mhm.
Um, and I think that that's helped me avoid some of the issues you had. So, for example, the animations actually don't feel clunky to me at all, but I think it's because I'm playing at a much higher frame rate. So that is obviously going to affect the clunkiness of the feel
Yeah, but I
there.
see it in the trailers, and those trailers are gonna be
But
rough.
I do agree that, yeah, some of the transitions between animations are a bit weird. Like you said, the one that you brought up about how you'll slide down a ladder and then she'll jump off, and it's like, just slide all the way down.
Yeah.
like, like that sort of stuff is weird to me. Um, so I had one. So I had one thing that I would consider to be a major bug, but it only happened once. However, I'm still going to tell you what it was, which is at a certain point, quite early on in the game, I had to reload a save because, for whatever reason, and when I reloaded this save, none of the geometry and level was loaded in around me. So
Mhm.
I could see everything. I could see the enemies. I could see where I had to go or whatever, but I couldn't move because it was just really weird. But instantly reloading that same save file fixed the issue straight away, and I haven't had it since. I've had a few other things, um, again, that are mostly minor. Like I had a momentary thing where Kay got stuck and couldn't pass through a door that she should have been able to pass through. But it was one of those things where it was like I was running in and then she sort of got stuck on this door, but she wasn't stuck on the door. Like I was clearly in an open space she should have been able to get through,
Yeah.
and the door just wouldn't let her through for about a second, and then she went through it. And it wasn't like the game wasn't slowing down or anything. It wasn't frame timing because the animation was still playing. So I had something like that, and I had her also, like I was walking up the stairs and then she randomly started to kind of float slightly above the stairs, so I couldn't actually walk up the stairs anymore because she was again stuck. But that lasted for half a second or a second again, and so that's what I mean. Like there were lots of, so far in my roughly 15 hours of playing the game, there are lots of small, minor technical things that I have issues with that happen often enough to break the immersion, but they are not really having a massive negative effect on my experience.
Yeah, and some of that stuff might be fixed for day one as well
And
too.
that's the other thing to say is the developers are aware, and they are aware of many issues, and some of these issues existed before we even got access to the game, and so they are working on this stuff. So if it's not fixed in a day one patch, I would imagine lots of these minor things will actually be fixed shortly after launch. um yeah, so hopefully you do not experience as many of those as we have. But like I said, this is not. I don't want anyone to think that this is a cyberpunk
No.
technical disaster kind of situation, or even a Bethesda style of game in terms of its technical woes, because it really isn't. This is still a very, like, the game runs very well,
Oh
especially
yeah.
on PC and everything like that. And like I said, there's nothing major on a technical front that's been an issue. I know Jeff has had a few more issues than me, but most of those have been minor, right, Jeff?
Yeah. Yeah, it's
So
something
so
that, like, you just reload or whatever. Like, they had, like, the one crash.
Oh, nice. I've had no crashes at all on PC. I do want to talk a little bit to the specific PC audience about performance and say that I do look. I have a 14900K KF processor for people who know what that is, and I have an Nvidia 4080 Super. So I do have a powerful rig. Not the most powerful you can have, but almost kind of up there. But on my setup, the game defaults to kind of ultra preset settings. You can customize them if you want, but on the ultra preset, which is a mix of ultra settings and high, in general gameplay, I'm getting 90 plus FPS, and in some of the busier places, that will drop into the 80s. But I've never seen anything lower than the 80s. That is in the 21 by 9 aspect ratio mode, which the game defaults to. You can adjust the game as Jeff has done on console to have it fit the whole screen. Um, there's like you just can have it do that, but in that mode, at least on PC, the game runs at a much lower FPS, and I'm talking like I can still run it reasonably well, but it will drop from 90 FPS generally to kind of mid 50s to 60 FPS. So it's quite a considerable drop in that other aspect ratio mode. And the one part to mention is that during this review period, I wasn't able to test out NVIDIA's frame generation, DLSS frame generation. So you probably can have it on the full screen without the 21 by 9 and use frame generation to get those higher frame rates again. But I haven't been able to test that at this time because that is, just not available to me, unfortunately. But it will be by the time you play the game. Uh, so yeah, but it's very consistent. I haven't really had any frame time issues either, where the game will just randomly slow down. So I'm very happy with the performance in general. But it's not going to be, you're not going to get a locked 100. You probably could get a locked 120 FPS because that's what I'm limited to on my display here. But you're not going to get that on the ultra preset, at least, while the cat eats Jeff over there.
It's biting. What are you doing?
um, but yeah, I
Do it
would
again,
say,
I dare
look,
you.
I, we will both have much more comprehensive reviews. I'm hoping to have mine already on the Outer Haven for you right now. Because I am a little bit further in the game than Jeff is, but we kind of got our codes around the same time. We were like like several hours apart, but obviously because of our different time zones, we've kind of played probably roughly around the same amount of time of the game as well. Jeff has just done a bit more side content than I have, because he decided to max out the Crimson Dawn for the outfit, and
Oh,
now
it's
he's
pretty. It's
decided
pretty
he
easy.
wants to go the other way instead.
It's pretty
so,
easy.
so that's interesting. But any sort of final thoughts on the game here, Jeff?
No, I think it's good. I don't think it is like revolutionary or anything like that. I think it's borrowing on a lot of the things that we've seen, even from Jedi Survivor and a bunch of other open world games. It is still excellent. Like I'm still very early on in the story because again, like um, you can go a very long time without the story progressing. And then once you eventually leave
Yeah,
that planet, then it starts
yeah,
to build on something because you actually get the point of what's going to happen, and that
yeah,
part's fairly interesting. It's um, yeah, I am really enjoying it. Like I think like the gameplay is fun. I like the sneaking around. I like the interacting with things. I like
yeah,
collecting like the loot and all that kind of stuff and getting the outfits. Like it's got a good gameplay loop that I do like. Um, I think it can you can I think it can get a little overwhelming in regards to like a lot of the things that start piling up.
yeah,
Um, where you'll go and check your objective stuff, and there'll be these different tiers of objectives, and then this will have like 7 and 12 and 13 and 2 and 1. Like there's a lot of things to kind of keep you busy.
Yeah.
Because there's also like you can play like Sabak, and you can play like all these like the
Yeah, so
racers
that's
and
what
the
I was
betting
going to
and stuff.
touch on as well. So there are actual mini games in the game. So like for one, there's these arcade cabinets you can find, and they are literally arcade games, and there are different ones. I've only found two so far, but there are more than that in the like there's two different games I found, but there are different arcade cabinets and you can play different games. You can play Sabak as well, which is a card game essentially where you're trying to get two cards of the same value, and the closer that value is to zero, the better your hand. Um, and you have special cards that you can play within it to kind of receive tokens back or take tokens off of other people, and the last person with with their tokens left wins. And there are kind of quests you can do within that one as well, so there's like different high rollers that
Yeah.
you can go up against that are harder to defeat, but as you defeat these different things you will get access to different things that might help you in the game. And one thing I really like is you can actually use Nix to cheat in the card game, where you can try and view other people's hands that you're playing against, and he'll go up behind them, and you have to basically time a button press to not get caught. But if you do get caught, it will raise your suspicion, and if you try again and you get caught again, you might be banned from the table, and then you can't come back to that table for a while. Um, so there is a lot of that, which I really like. And this is exactly why there is a huge amount of content in this game. I find for myself that the way they've handled that content and the way they sort of reveal it to you, I don't know whether it's because it feels a lot more dynamic or what have you, but it feels much less overwhelming than other Ubisoft games. And I can't quite put my finger on why yet, but I would say that if you enjoy a Ubisoft style of game but wanted one that is less overwhelming and gives you, you know, you're not going to see a map with like hundreds of icons on it, for example. I don't
Yeah.
think that's going to happen in this game. So, if you're down for that, this one is one for you, I think, based on what I've played so far. I'm like I said, I'm not going to give my score right now. I'm just going to say that I really do think this is a great game, and I actually think that so far this is probably my favorite Star Wars game, which I didn't expect to say going into it. I really do really think this is my favorite Star Wars game. I love the characters. I love the performances so far, which is something we didn't touch on, but the actual voice acting performances I really like. And the relationship between Kay and Nix is really interesting.
Yeah, her lying reminds me of every episode of Smallville,
Interesting.
where it's kind of like, Clark,
Interesting.
where were you? I was having a shower, but you're completely dry. I used a
Oh,
towel. Like
there
that.
and what I like as well, another thing that we didn't touch on is you can sell items in this game. So you'll pick up a lot of junk that you can sell, but there are certain items where it will say you can sell this, but it might have a use later. And there's something that I have which I will not say what it is, but there's something that I have which I've had from quite early on in the game, which is worth a decent amount of credits. But then I'm like, I'm not going to sell it because it says, but this might come in use later. But I
See,
want to know what that use is.
I just go sell all treasures.
Nice, nice.
That's all I
Um,
do.
and then the other one, the other mini game I actually forgot to mention, but Jeff briefly mentioned, is the horse racing essentially of the Star Wars universe, which is the Canto Bite races. But what I really like
Everyone's
about
favorite
these
part from Last Jedi.
what I really like about these is you can bet on them, but you can find data pads which will tell you who is going to win the next race. And if you find these data pads, the next time that you bet, even if it's hours later, that race will be fixed. And you just have to remember the clue that the data pad gave you.
Yeah, like one
And
of them said something, but I
yeah.
couldn't find that horse's name
Mm.
in the list.
So I've had one, for example, that said the horse that is 2 years old will win the next race, and then you just have to look
Mm,
for which one is 2 years old. Or like, there's one that I found yesterday, and I haven't done it yet, but it was like the 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 horse that is the lightest is going to win the next race. So
mm,
it's and there are ways even without it being fixed the mini game does actually give you enough information to quite confidently figure out who's going to win because you'll have information about the horses, whether they're like tired, anxious, whatever, and then you'll have information on their recent finishes. You'll see their weight, their age, and as you bet more on it, you can quite confidently figure out who's going to win these races. And it is quite a good way to make credits because some of these upgrades cost a lot of credits, and some of these materials you need for certain skills to be unlocked as well cost a lot of credits. So if you were going to play this game, my one piece of advice to you would be pick up everything. Everything that you see highlighted in blue when you do the scan, or that you see pop up with a Nix symbol just above it, where you can command him to go and get it for you. Pick up all of that stuff because you're going to need all of these resources, basically. Um, but I think that's it for now. So if you were only here for Star Wars Outlaws, we thank you for joining us, and please make sure you subscribe and like and all that good stuff because we'll have many more reviews and coverage coming in the future of other games. And we may, who knows, in a few weeks when all of you have played the game, we may even return with a spoiler cast and have a guest on. Who knows? So keep up to date with all that stuff. And if you leave us now, that's okay. But I believe, Jeff, we do have some small news stories that we'd like to quickly talk about before we end the show here.
yeah, just a couple things so that we're not coming back a week later and missing out on a couple headlines. Um, Deadlock's existence has finally been acknowledged by Valve with a store page and an official announcement. This comes to us from Rebecca Valentine at IGN. Valve is finally ready to take the wraps off Deadlock. It's not so secret multiplayer game that thousands of players have been playing for weeks. Throughout August, Deadlock has slowly been gaining attention and player population via a system of invites with existing player testers able to invite their friends. As a result, it's quietly amassed thousands of players, reaching over 18,000 concurrent players mid August and climbing to a peak of over 44,000 players earlier this week. However, despite the game being generally available to anyone who knew anyone else playing it, a splash screen at the start of the game asks players to not share anything about the game with anyone. Many players naturally ignored the relatively gentle and not legally binding warning, resulting in a number of videos popping up on YouTube showcasing gameplay and at least one media write up in The Verge. As a result, we've known for weeks now that Deadlock is a 6v6 third person hero shooter with a MOBA twist, in that a lot of it takes place across 4 lanes with aggressively respawning waves of troopers. It's still in early development, Valve warns, with lots of temporary art and experimental gameplay. However, Valve has now officially lifted its request not to share information about the game and revealed its official store page. Um, yeah, like I've seen like a lot of people essentially like talking about this game. I haven't still haven't even checked gameplay at all to see kind of what it looks like. Because hero shooters to me like kind of live and die by their characters, which is why Concord for me looks like it's dead on arrival.
Yeah.
Um, but it's sort of weird that they were kind of nonchalant about the don't share um,
Yeah, it is a little
footage
bit
about it.
weird, isn't it? Because they hadn't even announced it, right? So
Yeah, so like you don't have like a legally binding NDA or anything like that. You're like, hey guys, just don't talk about it. And then The Verge did a huge write up about it. I think they showed a whole bunch. I haven't checked anything on it, but
yeah.
yeah, it sparked a lot of controversy around kind of trust
Whether
within.
you should have done it or not, yeah.
Yeah. But no, that information's out there, so you can check the store page to see if it's what you want. And if you know anybody that's playing it, you can probably hit them up for an invite and kind of take it on as it is.
Yeah.
Um, all right, so we got Black Myth Wukong has sold an incredible 10 million copies in just 3 days.
That's
This comes to
crazy.
us from IGN. The action RPG, which is inspired by the classical Chinese novel Journey to the West, went on sale on August 20th across PC and PlayStation 5. Now, as of 9 p.m. Beijing time on August 23rd, Game Science has announced that the game has sold already 10 million copies, with an eye-watering 3 million concurrent players across all platforms. Thanks to all players worldwide for your support and love, Game Science tweeted, have a great gaming weekend. And this is on top of the game still to come to Xbox. There is reportedly an Xbox version. My guess is that it is the optimization for the Series S that's kind of holding it back. Just because like even like the PS5 version like pales in comparison to the PC. Um, it's just optimization right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, like I want to play it. I mean, I'm eventually going to get it. I've just got the website costs that are coming up that has pretty much swallowed up most of my money. But if I can find a physical copy, which is just a code in the case, there's no actual disc copies. I might do some trades to get it because like I do want to play it. It definitely does look good. I watched Maximilian Dude play probably like 8 hours of it already. Um, but no, it looks solid, and yeah, it's selling like absolute crazy. Um, so that is going doing good
It
there.
also it also broke some sort of record on Steam. I think it had the most concurrent users for any single player game ever on Steam. And
Yeah,
it's like and it was like second in the overall charts or something. I think it was only beaten by PUBG, I believe, in the
yeah,
end. So yeah, huge congratulations to them. I have heard that it's a good game with technical issues, even on the PC. I know that the PS5 version really doesn't run well, so it might be worth holding off for a little while if you are particularly sensitive to performance issues and that kind of thing. But yeah, it sounds like it's a good game, and I like to see brand new studios having this sort of success. So congratulations to them.
yeah. They had some weird streaming issues where they're like, "Don't talk about feminist propaganda" and all this other kind of stuff. But yeah. Yeah, speaking of sales as well, too, Microsoft's Sea of Thieves has reportedly topped 1 million sales on PlayStation 5. According to Windows Central sources, the Rare-developed game hit a significant sales milestone on Sony's console some time ago. While Xbox hasn't announced sales figures for the game on PS5, there's been plenty of evidence to suggest that the $40 USD title has performed strongly since its release in late April. According to Sony, Sea of Thieves was the most downloaded PS5 game in both US and Canada and Europe in May. In June, it ranked amongst the top 5 downloaded games, and in July, it remained in the top 10. Um, this is not surprising at all, really, considering that for all of the talk that PlayStation gamers have said that Xbox doesn't have games, they're sure buying them.
Yeah,
And that's definitely going to be the case when Indiana Jones, while it will launch later this year on Xbox Series X, S, and PC, it's going to be coming to PlayStation 5 early next year in spring. Which I think is just going to have the same kind of effect. I do kind of wish that the PlayStation 5 announcement would have come after the Xbox and PC launch,
yeah. Let it come
um,
out on Xbox first, then announce it.
and
That's
then
what they
talk
should
about
have
it.
done. Yeah.
So that's what it is. And I know a lot of people are saying that Phil has kind of backtracked on the Indiana Jones statement in terms of it not coming to PS5. However, if people actually pay attention to the quote when they talked about how they were bringing 4 games to PlayStation
He said it
5
wasn't
and
one of
PlayStation
those
4,
4.
it wasn't one
Yeah.
of those 4, and that is true. So like everything
So
else
he
that they've
didn't
stated,
lie.
yeah, yeah, everybody. Well, the thing about it is people only lie when you miss the context, right?
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
that seems to be the case. So there's
Yeah.
basically that it there. Um, we also had Gamescom happened and we had a bunch of announcements. I'm not going to go over them
Yes.
all. Basically, there's just
But
way
there
too
were
many right
some
now.
big ones, right?
Yeah. One that I'm kind of excited for is that Genshin Impact is finally coming to Xbox. It's going to
Hmm.
hit in November, and this can open up the floodgates then to Honkai Star Rail, and Zenless Zone Zero.
All the
Um,
games that Jeff likes, basically.
yeah, like Genshin Impact is fantastic. Like to me, it's like it's the best Breath of the Wild that we've had, in regards to like games branching out and kind of borrowing that look. But no, it's honestly, like, if it has to crossplay with PC, get in on the PC thing, get on all the bonus things and all that kind of stuff, and then wait for the Xbox launch. That's going to be super exciting. Just to
I mean,
see,
maybe I'll finally try it out because I've never tried it. So,
it's really good, and this opens up Xbox to making a lot more money, because these games are an absolute cash cow. Like they make a shit ton of money.
yeah.
Um, and speaking of games that we hope will make money, and that is Marvel Rivals will release later this year. It's been announced. So it's going to be coming out on December 6th. And the nice thing about it is all heroes will be free at launch and beyond, which means that you're never going to play for a hero. You're just going to be basically playing through like battle passes and like skins and all sorts of stuff, basically things that kind of drive those markets to keep the
Yeah.
players involved. Because I
And
think when
also,
you
they will
log,
still need, if they're continuing to support the game with content and
yeah,
stuff, they will need ongoing funds to support that.
yeah.
And they need some way to get some money in because these kinds of games don't work without that. However, I really do like what they're doing with the characters here. That's cool.
Yeah, like the everything looks fantastic. It doesn't look like it's just movie bait for a lot of stuff.
Mhm.
The characters look fantastic. Like the character art to me just kind of reminds me of like Kenneth Rocafort's artwork.
Oh, yeah.
Um, and it just looks exactly like it. Like if you honestly put the concept art next to his art, you'll be like, is he the concept artist? Like it's brilliant. Yeah, I'm super excited for this game. I never got into any of the betas and things like that. Like,
Yeah, I didn't
um,
either. So I am looking forward to this one.
but it looks absolutely solid. And we also have Avowed is targeting 30 FPS, says Obsidian art director.
Yeah.
Speaking on the Iron Lords podcast, art director Matt Hansen called 30 FPS the bare minimum the team is aiming for. It's a first person single player game. You don't necessarily need that 60 FPS. Then allows us to get a lot juicier with visual effects and lighting and all that other stuff. It's a trade off we opted to make relatively early on, and we're really happy with that. The game's running very smooth for how visually dense it is, and that has always been our goal. Um, for me, I just want the game to be fun, and if the frame rate doesn't affect kind of how fluid a lot of the game feels, I think I'm fine. I think the PC version is probably going to be running 60 FPS, so that may be where a lot of people kind of play it. Um, but no, like the game looks excellent. I don't think the 30 FPS is like a essentially a bad thing unless it dips well below it in certain areas and
Yeah.
stuff.
It can be, at the end of the day, the way I always look at it is I do agree with the developer here that for a single player game, I don't think that you necessarily need above 30 FPS. Um, and I think, especially if it's a very consistent 30 FPS, I actually see little to no issue. However, I can understand some of people's frustration here because all of the gameplay they've shown up to this point was only 60 FPS gameplay. Uh, but then, what I would say is they never said that any of that gameplay was running on the console, as
Yeah,
far as I'm
and
aware. So,
like I think a lot of it comes down to just that the expectations going into all the new hardware is that we were going to get games that looked visually amazing and they were 60 FPS and they were 4K and all the buzzwords basically people want to hear when new hardware comes out. But people have to understand that if you are wanting graphically demanding games or games that are massive and all that kind of stuff, you're generally not going to get those types of things from $500 or $600 boxes. Like try and buy a
Yeah.
PC for 500 or 600 bucks that has a Blu-ray drive and has an
Yeah.
SSD and is
Hmm.
able to run those types of games. It just doesn't
Yeah.
happen.
And also the other thing is, even when it does happen, what happens when this new, more powerful hardware comes out is that you get a lot of 60 FPS games for a while, and then developers want to use that power to push what they're able to do in a design way instead of in a performance way.
Yeah.
They want, they want to have more people
And
on
like
screen, or they want to whatever it is.
yeah, and you can get, um, like in the case of like Spider-Man Miles Morales, where they made a lot of compromises at the launch of the game, they ended up fulfilling a lot of the technical demands that people wanted later on because they had time to then optimize and kind of stuff because a lot
Yes.
of that kind of stuff comes from optimization.
Yeah.
It comes from like certain things like,
Yeah.
when Starfield had like its patches to basically bring 60 FPS to the Xbox
Mhm.
Series S, and whether that's through mods and things like that, there are optimizations that are made to make those things happen. So it could be very well that, you know, months later, um, Avowed gets a patch that bumps it up to 45 or 60 FPS. Like there is probably a likelihood of that happening.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. So, it is what it is. I don't think it's the end of the world. I think people blow these sorts of stories slightly out of proportion
Especially when they haven't
because,
even played it.
yeah, because like you said, the other thing is frame rate is important, and frame rate definitely helps things feel more fluid, even when they're not necessarily fluid. But if a game feels fluid in the way that the animations look and are designed, then the frame rate has less of an impact.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, for example, I'll give you an example. An overly animated game that some people don't like, I really enjoyed, but Red Dead Redemption 2 has a lot of animations that are purposely
A
slow,
lot.
and these animations are slow even when you're playing at a very high frame rate on PC. Okay, because that is the way the game is meant to feel and look. Like, sometimes it's not anything to do with the frame rate. Like, and I think that that's what a lot of people don't understand. Unfortunately, do we have any more news here before we finish off this episode?
Just one, the old Doctor Strange one.
Okay.
Microsoft has unveiled several new accessibility product offerings, including the Xbox Adaptive Joystick. This comes to us from Tom Ivan at VGC. They also include new wireless and customizable controllers designed for Xbox and 3D printable files for adaptive thumbstick toppers. In a
Yes.
post on Xbox Wire, Microsoft said there are over 425 million players with disabilities worldwide. Its latest efforts to cater to this market that include the Xbox Adaptive Joystick, which was designed as a wired companion for Xbox controllers specifically for players with limited mobility. It includes 4 button inputs on the front, the standard Xbox thumbstick, and 2 additional buttons that mimic the bumper and trigger placement on a traditional controller. This thing basically kind of looks like a Wii Mo or like a nunchuck in a lot of ways, or like the Move one,
Yeah.
but without the little ball at the
Do you
end.
know what it reminded me of? A Meta Quest uh, remote.
Okay,
Like,
I've never played with the MetaQuest, so I'm not too
so
sure
so
about
that
the game.
it looked very similar to a Meta Quest remote to me, because it has the stick at the top. There's a few buttons on it, and that kind of thing. What I want to say about this is people still don't realize how important this stuff is, because they talk about here 400 and what is it, 25 million players with disabilities across all platforms, right? but they are still the ones that are leading the way, at least in terms of hardware accessibility. Xbox is the platform that is leading the way, on
Yeah,
a first party front.
and the one thing with this as well too is like the Xbox adaptive joystick will be available in select markets in early 2025, exclusively through the Microsoft Store, priced at $30 US, which is
That's a
cheap because
really good.
normally
Yeah.
like accessibility controllers are drastically expensive.
Mhm.
Peripheral specialist 8-bit DOS Light SE 2.4 gigahertz wireless controller, which is available now for about $60 US in select markets, was also designed for gamers with limited mobility. It features low resistance buttons and high sensitive Hall effect joysticks. Now, for people who don't know what Hall effect joysticks are, when you have your
They
standard
basically never
Switch,
have drift.
yeah. So basically, these guys here have mechanics in there that can cause drift over time.
Yeah.
The Giant Bomb always called them the Scott Hall effect, with
Yeah.
Razor Ramon. So every time I hear Hall effect, I keep saying Scott Hall effect joysticks. Those guys can't have drift.
Yeah.
They're
Because they're
legally
magnetic.
designed to not have drift ever. So
Yeah.
like for example, people are hoping that the next Switch, like that their Joy-Cons use Hall effect.
Yeah. And the
Um,
reason that most controllers don't is because it is a more expensive technology to use,
yeah,
and it would push up the price of controllers. But man, I wish all of these consoles and hardware manufacturers offered at least an option to, like when I go on, for example, to customize my Xbox controller, if I want to get one from the design lab, why can't I go, yeah, I'll pay an extra so much money for Hall effect sticks? Do you know what I mean?
yeah.
Like, like,
Especially with the controllers of like a certain premium and stuff, like because like I'm
yeah,
looking at these where is it? Oh, it went away. The 2.4G or whatever like that. Like
yeah,
I would love to take a look and see at those because like $60 US isn't too bad for a controller that has
Hall effect. That's good. That is good.
oh, they have um Black Myth Wukong controllers.
Nice, nice. I
Those
do
look
want to go
sick.
back to this accessibility thing for a minute
Yeah,
because what I want to say is I was writing a piece and I decided not to write it in the end because I thought it would be too controversial. But essentially, I was writing something over on Outer Haven where I was talking about how the World Health Organization back in 2021, I believe it was, estimated that 1 out of every 6 people in the world has a disability, right, of some form. They have what is called a significant disability, which means it has an actual impact on their life, right? And when you think about that in percentage terms, that tells you that if we translate that data, that should mean that 1 out of 6 video game players has a disability, right?
yeah,
And that is a lot of people. But it made me wonder how many video games are not selling as much as they should because there's a massive percentage of the audience who can't play them. And this is why accessibility options are so important. And, we talked about it a bit earlier. Star Wars Outlaws is very, very accessible with a lot of options. Something else like Elden Ring, which I've played recently a lot of, as you all know, is not very accessible whatsoever. um, it's and there's a big problem there, and I like the fact that Microsoft have called attention here to the fact that there's 400 plus million people with some sort of disability that play video games across all platforms, because that is a lot of people, and these people often are let down by a lack of options, or for some people, especially those with physical disabilities, they may not even have the hardware options to even try and play games in the first place. Um, So I love seeing this stuff. I'm glad they're doing it. I did see that they were showing off the the analog stick toppers that they're doing, which are come in different shapes and sizes, basically, because depending on what your disability is, you may not be able to grasp or control a traditional analog stick. You may
Yeah.
need it to be a different shape to have some level of control over it. And they have a lot of options. I saw them showing them off apparently at like their Gamescom thing that they did. They did some sort of event to tie into Gamescom where they were showing those things off to people as well. And I just, I hope that we see more companies do more stuff, not just on the software front, but on the hardware front as well. Because PlayStation did start doing some accessibility hardware, but they've only done one thing so far. Whereas this is a nice, like you said, the cost of that like Joy-Con looking controller is so good in accessibility cost terms.
Yeah.
That is amazing because and it's needed. So I'm glad that we were able to end on a really positive bit of news here. And I hope that you've enjoyed this episode. If you've stuck with us all this way, please make sure that you obviously like, subscribe, share it with your friends, all of that good stuff. Follow us on the socials, which will be linked in the description. Make sure you go and read both of our full reviews, which, if they aren't already in the description, they will be at some point. So come back to this episode later on, and those links will be down there. I'm hoping to have mine there already. So go and check that out over on the Outer Haven, and obviously check Jeff's out on analogstickgaming.com. We will be back hopefully next week talking about more video game news and all that good stuff. But for now, it's a goodbye from me.
See ya.